Hello, and welcome to another Conversations in Time podcast, the award-winning counterfactual history podcast that tops the What If charts. Enough of me, though. It's over to the guys.
Hello, and welcome to another Conversations in Time podcast. I'm John N.
And I'm Ian G.
So, do you realise that this is our 49th podcast so far, Ian?
Well, yeah, I think I do. I couldn't have given you that exact figure, but I knew it was something like that. So, yeah, it's been quite good. We're on a roll, aren't we?
Well, that's right, yeah. We've had 3 series, and this will ultimately be the end of Series 3. So, next year, in 2026, we'll be starting Series 4. Series 3 had a lot of good guests.
Yeah.
Certainly made some very interesting podcasts, and next year will be much the same. We're going to try and get as more guests on if we can, and I think they make quite a difference to the podcast itself. So we'll be having old and new guests. So I know that we've had a couple, or we had Gillian a couple of weeks ago or last week, which is great. So everybody look out for that. But anyway, that was then, and this is now. So what are we doing for our season closing podcast episode on the internet's number one counterfactual history podcast?
Well, just for a bit of fun. I know it's Christmas, but don't worry, we're not doing a Christmas episode. What we thought we'd do is talk about 5 topics, a bit like speed dating. So we're going to do speed dating with a clock running in the background. The good news again is you won't hear the clock, but we're going to do 10 minutes per item, a bit like countdown, I suppose. The countdown clock-ish. Well, I was going to have my clock running on my phone, so when we come to the end of the 10 minutes, we'll bing, bing, we'll move on. So 5 topics, real time, rapid fire. That's what we're going to do. So what's the first one today?
Okay, right. Well, I've actually got a 6th one if we run through them too quick. But anyway, let's start off with the first one. So the first one, which, as you could argue, has a little bit of could be not related to Christmas, but it's certainly used at Christmas time as well as other times of the year, which is bubble wrap. One of the things that we didn't mention about this what if scenario. So all of the 5 things that we're going to talk about were all inventions by individuals, or I think 2 people on a couple of them, but they weren't ultimately being invested. Nobody else was looking at these. So without these people making these inventions, they wouldn't exist today. That's the approach that we're looking at.
Uh-huh.
So the first one is bubble wrap. So bubble wrap was invented in 1957 by Alfred Fielding and Mark, I don't know how you pronounce it, whether it's the French Chavanes, Chavannes. Chavanes, is that? Or is I'm doing a really bad Chavannes? Anyway.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, they were actually trying to create wallpaper. It's textured wallpaper with what they were, by sealing shower curtains together.
I can see the good. I mean, not the material, but I can see the logic in that. You do get sort of quite textured wallpaper that has bubbles in it, but not plastic bubbles, obviously. But yeah, I can get that.
That's right. So they were trying to create this wallpaper, and it failed. So all that effort put in, and nothing came out of it. But they did then realise that these air-filled plastic bubbles, I don't know what sort of turned them on to, why don't we wrap something in it? But it obviously occurred to them that it would make some excellent protective packing material. Nobody had ever thought of this before, and nobody was asking for it. So let's say it didn't, they weren't looking at textured wallpaper, so we haven't got bubble wrap. So, 1957 onwards, what do we think the outcome of no bubble wrap and its significance on everyday life?
Interesting thing is, 1957, from a UK perspective, I think it took a long time for that to pop up into either people's consciousness or actual usage. But I mean, that's a by the by. But I would have thought it wasn't until the 1980s in the UK, certainly, that it was of any significant use. But so I don't know what I'd been doing for the previous 20 years. But
well, I mean, there could be it was expensive, and it you wouldn't necessarily see it for normal.
Yeah, I suppose to a certain extent.
Don't forget, Amazon didn't exist then.
Well, exactly. I was trying to rephrase that. Yeah, but there was certainly no comparison to the online shopping experience that there is today. But there was equivalents, arguably, in the analog world of, but it's mostly clothes. And again, you wouldn't wrap it in plastic because you would need to. But I mean, the interesting thing about this, and I was speculating about this briefly offline, is that arguably, and I've no idea what the statistics say, but based on nothing other than my own experience, bubble wrap is moving out of favour for obvious reasons around plastic. So we've got far too much one single-use plastic, although many people, myself included, try and keep bits of significant pieces of bubble wrap because you can always find some use for it, some future use of just sending things to somebody or other or relatives. But it tends to be cardboard now, and Amazon being prime, no pun intended. Amazon being a prime example of that. I can't speak for some of the cheaper Chinese rip-offy companies, but
so I mean that sort of gives you a clue as to what the potential outcome. So no bubble wrap, and if people aren't using bubble wrap now, that would be something that happened in the 50s. From 57. So how would you describe Amazon's approach? I mean, my understanding, or my experience, is that you use a lot of paper. So you have a very large box, stuffed with, rolled up paper to create the cushion effect.
Indeed. But I'm just remembering something as well. So we had a new bed delivered a few months ago, and it was all obviously in flat pack format, and there wasn't any plastic in it at all. But the packaging between the pieces of wood was quite a sophisticated sort of corrugated cardboard thing. Now, how on earth it had been manufactured, I couldn't begin to imagine. But it was more than just corrugated cardboard. It was sort of a hexadecimal shapes and layers of cardboard and interleaved. So, but 6 months ago, or even for other companies today, that could easily have been bubble wrap. So there's definitely a move away from plastic. So I suppose you could argue that it's quite interesting, actually. You would imagine in the 1950s were quite cardboardy, paper based anyway, but they moved away to plastic because it was a very unique product. It's
Well, I mean, for a start, it's cheap. It would have been cheaper. So I think that was one of the
certainly in bulk. There's no doubt. Yeah,
So it was a cheaper way of protecting goods that you wanted to ship.
Yeah,
and you could ship them in a smaller container. So it was smaller, so you could ship more items.
Well, is it a smaller container, or is it more efficient in the delivery process? Because but once you decided you can wrap a funny shaped object into a box safely, you can have regular sized boxes that go in regular sized container ships and regular sized trucks and regular sized vans, if you see what I mean. Because we've all had the experience where you get a reasonably large box with a very small item in it. But if the van was full of different shaped boxes, it wouldn't be, the end-to-end.
No, but say you were shipping a tea service, right? Yeah. Plates, cups, plates, and saucers, right? Yeah. So, and you're packing those with paper. Yeah. So you wrap them up in paper, and then you got to wrap more paper into the box. Then to create some sort of cushioning, you've got to put a lot of paper. Or I imagine you would pack a fairly sizable box out to stop it moving around. Whereas with bubble wrap, it's fairly tight, close to the eye.
Yeah, and I suppose bubble wrap is easier to adhere, not itself, but you can obviously with,
well, it's in the name, bubble wrap. You wrap it around.
Whereas paper is easy to wrap, but you need lots of layers of paper, and even then, it's not quite as. I mean, the more I think about it, cardboard, this sophisticated new cardboard, in my experience, is usually on flat, square shapes that you can't really wrap it around a delicate object. You can be bubble wrap. So
they tend to be that type of cardboard packing is like shaped, isn't it? Where you have it's shaped around the object itself.
Well, that's true. You do get, that's the other thing. You do get paper mache equivalents to bubble wrap, but you're right. The companies using those are producing multiple, hundreds, thousands, millions of examples of the same object, and they've obviously put a bit of money into getting a company to make them a paper mache mold that they can put the object into. If you're a third-party retailer selling second-hand materials, all of which could be different, you're not going to be able to make paper mache molds for a one-off, retail sale. So bubble wrap again is ideal. If it didn't exist, you're right, it would be layers and layers of paper. I suspect it would be more wastage because it wouldn't be as good.
I think that's one. Although there's obviously serious drive to recycling. That's not true for the last 50 years. So, between in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, there would have been a lot of packaging material which ultimately would have gone to landfill after you've chucked it away.
Well, it depends what it was, though. If it's paper and stuff, it doesn't matter, does it? Because it'll happen.
So you're talking about, essentially a paper-based, cardboard-based alternative, although that's fairly modern. But what are the other what else have you ever seen? So I mean, there's either paper, wrapping paper and scrunching up paper to create a cushion, or your other favourite packing material, which is foam peanuts.
Yeah, but again, they need a container, don't they? It's a box essentially, because and again, how do you ensure that the object in the box doesn't
move to the bottom?
Well, exactly. I suppose you've got to compress it quite a lot in terms of, as long as you put enough of these polystyrene peanuts or whatever they're called into the box, in theory it shouldn't move around. But then again, you're putting quite a lot in, and it's not as good as bubble wrap, really, is it? I mean, that's
no, that's what I mean. So without bubble wrap, the only two alternatives, apart from a molded polystyrene, and they are used when they are required. TVs and stuff don't come in bubble wrap, or they come in polystyrene, because that's
it's a horrendous thing, really, because because it breaks up into tiny little bits at the drop of a hat, and is in the environment for centuries. Yeah, but you're right. Having just got a new TV this year, it came in molded polystyrene.
So ultimately, we could be awash with peanuts, or they're everywhere and they're in landfill.
Or we just have more wastage, because before bubble wrap, people were sending things across oceans quite happily, where how much was broken at the other end is the other thing.
Well, no, that's right. So it'd be more expensive to ship it, because you'd expect people to take more care.
Would you? But you just have more breakage, so you would just higher insurance costs and.
That's right. Yes. Well, then the insurance costs are going to be borne by the customer, aren't they? So,
yeah, of course, yeah.
I mean, let's face it, the other thing that we wouldn't have is the old stress relief of popping the bubbles.
That's true, indeed. But again, that's why I'm thinking of a 1980s thing, really. I suppose kids still do it, but yeah, indeed. Right, 10 minutes are up.
Well, I still pop the bubbles when you get the chance. Do you? It's not.
Oh, okay. Well, no, for the benefit of the tape, that's not a euphemism for anything, as far as I know, but it's...
Well, not as far as I know. Well,
right.
Leave some comments. Right.
Indeed.
Okay.
It's not. Next.
So off to our next what if. Right. So 1968, although these aren't all in time order, you'll be pleased to know. So 1968, Spencer Silver at 3M, and he had a colleague called Art Fry. So anyway, it started off with Spencer Silver accidentally creating a weak adhesive while trying to make a super strong one. So he did the exact opposite of what he was trying to do. And then his colleague, this Art Fry, he realised it could keep bookmarks in his hymnal. I'm not sure what a hymnal is, obviously some sort of book, leading to the ubiquitous sticky notes we use today. Nobody, and of course, nobody was going, we need these, we need notes that we can pick up and drop, or, lift and re-stick multiple times with little notes on them. So another one-off.
You haven't used
ubiquitous.
You haven't used the classic name for them yet. Is that deliberate?
What, Post-it note?
Correct. That's the first thing I said.
Is it? Oh, right. Sorry.
So so we're talking about.
To explain, I'm talking about Post-it. Sorry, yeah, I completely went off of it. Yeah, so Post-it notes. Spencer Silver at 3.
Is he talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Looking at my notes too, clearly. Anyway, so they're office staples now, unbelievably.
Well, they were. We have not worked in an office for a few years, COVID and what have you. But yeah,
all right, pre-COVID.
Oh, yeah, undoubtedly they were. I mean, in the era of a paperless office, I'm looking at some now. They're not. Admittedly, they're not post-it notes. There's some sort of freebie thing my wife got from some company, but there's essentially sticky notes. But yeah, so. I'm trying to visualize, and obviously in meetings, you could you would put post-it notes onto whiteboards to illustrate points along some other text or a flow of information. Something we took for granted in the last, and again, 1968. Whether Britain was just behind everybody, but I mean, admittedly, I wasn't working anywhere in the 1970s. I was at school, but
That's right. They certainly didn't use them at school.
But
They got
I'm pretty certain. You know, I'm sure I was working in the late 80s before they suddenly popped up. Whether they've been around in at college, in the early to mid 80s, there wasn't. I can imagine.
There's a difference between when it was invented and when it became generally available.
I'm just curious as in my head as why it took so long to break through, but maybe there's a reason for it.
I mean, we might not have been in the right organisation, the part of an organisation that early on used Post-its. In our later careers, we used them.
I have quite extensive at college, but I can't. But anyway, so where would we be without them? Well, it's a good question, isn't it? I mean,
do you think sellotape? Well, sellotape. I don't know what the generic term for sellotape is. So
actually, is what I used to say on Blue Peter. It said,
so it's sticky tape holding up.
What do they call it in America? Case some name, isn't it? But anyway, it's all sort of there. Scotch tape. Is that what they call it in America?
But that's another. Just around.
Yeah, I suppose it's a relatively. The world's not going to stop spinning at its axis because we run out of Post-it notes. But, so I suppose they argue what would be the impact to society? Well, obviously none. But, what would people use instead? I suppose the argument is, would you use anything instead? I mean, you would have a notebook, a notepad with...
Well, you could, I mean, if you wanted to highlight, because... one of the uses of Post-it notes is to write something down and stick it on the wall or stick it on a board or whatever.
Yeah.
So in that scenario, what would the alternative be? You could have a magnetic board and a magnetic, I've seen people do that. You could use sticky tape just to constantly keep...
do that. Well, to be honest, I can visualise somebody sticking an A4 piece of paper to something with a list of things written on it. But
that's right, yeah. You could potentially use paper clips. To clip it onto something else.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe not when you're using it on a whiteboard, or on a board or whatever. But it's interesting to think how much would it have held back any innovations or progressive thinking in being able to, a brainstorming session would be a lot different potentially without Post-it notes.
Indeed. I mean, the fundamental thing about a postage note, what am I talking about? A Post-it note is that it was disposable in the sense of, I mean, I'm only, in my experience of what are I using for? You would have a notebook that you would keep, you would write things in that you would want to refer back to. Now, you could put a Post-it, you would, as things develop, maybe stick a Post-it note in that as supporting text. But Post-its, 95% of usage was, you're on the phone to somebody and you were writing down some pertinent information. You came off the phone to somebody, you did something with that pertinent information and you threw the Post-it note away. Not necessarily straight away, but it was disposable. Whereas your notebook, for whatever reason, meetings or technical specifications of stuff you were trying to do over a period of time, you're referring to your notes essentially. You're referring to a notebook. Now, as I said, that's not to say you wouldn't have Post-it notes in your notebook. So, yeah, you can see the usage of notebooks, or pieces of paper, or as you said, maybe,
The only thing with notebooks, of course, is that sometimes you forget where things are, and you're forever trying to find some... Because let's face it, Post-it note is for a note, which could be 2 or 3 words. It's not necessarily a large sentence. Yeah. And you just write something in a notebook that's full of other notes.
Yeah.
It sometimes can be difficult, especially if you've got if you had a big notebook rather than a small one, because if you have a small one, you might have multiple notebooks.
Yeah.
And... because let's face it, we've seen Post-it notes that stay on a wall or in your cubicle for years, with the relevant information.
People's telephone numbers but again, if you didn't have well, that would be on top of your screen, obviously, to solve this place not to remember where it is. Where's my password was written? I've literally seen somebody writing their password on an old-fashioned CRT screen. I thought it was probably me. But the not to any personal information. I'm not completely crazy, but just the network information. I know what our priorities lay at the time. But yeah, it's a handy tool. I think its replacements of combinations of things would be less handy. But I don't think it's I can't think of an analogy. But I don't think it's a thing that you think, well, if we haven't got this, we can't do anything. It would just be a little bit less efficient, a little bit more inconvenient.
I think, like you say, we'd be a lot more used to having a notebook to hand.
Yeah.
Just be,
well, as I said, it depends what your notebook's for. I mean, if your notebook is there, I mean, what I tended to do, and I'm not saying is there anything that was, I would always buy a ring binder notebook, because anything I'd decided that I'd scribbled in my notebook, which was rubbish, which wasn't that uncommon at the end of a meeting, I'd rip out and throw away. But anything I wanted to keep, like how to do something, I mean, back in the day when I was doing technical work, how to do something, if I didn't do it very often, I'd write it up so I could refer to it. I mean, it's hardly a great insight. But I wouldn't put that on a note. I wouldn't put that on a post-it, because I'd lose it, you know. That's not to say that.
I mean, the other thing is with post-it notes is they are prompts, because you stick them and you see them all the time. Whereas with a notebook, when the notebook's shut, you can't see anything.
Yeah,
and you'd have an impact on your way of thinking potentially.
Yeah. But certainly a handy invention, replaced by multiple things, which again is always an indication that what you've invented is quite good. Because if you got to replace it with 3 different things, none of which are totally ideal for.
Well, what has it been replaced with? I don't think it's been replaced with anything other than an electronic equivalent.
No, we've all got notes on our phones and, funk apps and stuff. And you can even get a Post-it app on your phone if you want to. But
that's what I mean. So it's just an electronic version of the same thing. But
happen on your phone in a hurry, if you're actually at your home base in terms of your office or your home office or whatever, is never as easy just writing it down on a quick piece of paper, is it? And the quick piece of paper that we won't lose is yellow or pink and is obvious, and it's a clever little invention.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
Okay, I think we've done that one. Next.
Let's stop for a word from our sponsors.
G'day cobbers. Got mould in the dunny? Rust on the ute? Dirt that's been camping in your shed since the Hawke government? Well, fear not, folks. O-Techno has the answer. Yes, it's back. It's snake oil spumante. And you thought it was only good enough for the gripes and Vindaloo vengeance. One splash of snake oil spumante, and that grime packs a bag, texts its mum and leaves the country. Is it science? Is it witchcraft? Or is it just hot air strained through a roo herder's day-old sock? We can't say, but we tested it on mould. We tested it on rust. We accidentally tested it on Bruce's thong. They're spotless and he's bloody furious. We can say this. It works harder than a tradie on double time. If it doesn't shift at first time, you cheapskate, you didn't use enough. Side effects may include, what? You don't really care, do you? Do not drink it. Do not think about drinking it. If it looks delicious, that's on you, mate. Oh, Techno, you've only gone and blum and done it again.
Today's episode is sponsored by O-Techno, helping yesterday, today. O-Techno is a subsidiary of Uncle Schnookums Enterprises, wholly owned and operated by Deforest Co. Global, pioneers in transforming the world's rainforests into your favorite products. All rights reserved. No claims or returns will be honored.
And we're back. Right, so we move back a few years, 1965. We're talking about Kevlar. So I'll put the name in first before I start saying who did what. And Stephanie Kwolek at DuPont discovered the liquid crystalline polymer while searching for lightweight, strong fibres for car tyres or for tyres. Now, normally, the solution that she created, she would have chucked away. That was the usual. But something convinced her that it needed to be looked into, and she did convince some technicians to test it. Lo and behold, it led to this material that revolutionised, I suppose the most famous thing is body armour, although it is used in aerospace and other industries. It's not just a body armour, a solution for body armour. But let's talk about that one then. So now, she chucked it down the drain and moved on, and we never have Kevlar. So, a lightweight, super strong material. Or super strong synthetic.
Well, I suppose the question is, I don't know, because this is the part of the fun of this task I haven't. I didn't know this was going to come up, but, although you did mention it briefly, to be fair. But the is there an equivalent, albeit a different technology, in existence as well? Is there something else that is used as an armor?
Well, if you talk about body armor, so steel plates.
Well, and ceramic plates, but they're not.
They have linen head. Yeah, I know. But that would be an equivalent. So they're much heavier rather than being.
Yes, and you're not going to put Kevlar. So Kevlar's used on helicopters and aircraft, as you say. Certainly, I don't know what you were referring to, but it essentially is armor on helicopters. They're just light. you can't put steel or ceramic plates around fuel tanks on a helicopter because you wouldn't get the plane or the aircraft off the ground. I'm just wondering if there's an actual equivalent fabric type or a polymer type, which is completely different technology from Kevlar. So the answer is I don't know, and we don't spend all day Googling it. But I mean, obviously, the obvious question is if it wasn't invented, a number of people would be dead somewhere.
No, that's right. I think you have to assume that there would be a higher mortality rate.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the thing. I don't know how many people have had their lives saved by Kevlar. Obviously, in America, it's likely to be more than anywhere else. But but
if you're talking about helicopters and planes, I mean, in a military sense, I mean, there's been plenty of military conflicts. I don't know how many of those planes didn't crash because they'd got Kevlar.
Well, it's a good question. I have no idea what the statistics. I mean, in terms of, it's unlikely to be, I don't think it's used particularly to any degree in most aircraft, but it certainly is used in helicopters. I don't know many helicopters have, failed to crash or to be shot down because of Kevlar. I mean, there may be some statistics out there. So again, yeah, there's that aspect.
I've got a feeling it might even be used in spacecraft as well. So not just aircraft.
What, to protect from?
I don't know. I'm just
because it's a strong material and
well, yeah, super strong and light. I mean, let's face it.
Oh yeah, that's it's.
Yeah, I mean, it might be part of, I don't know. I mean, it's just something that I'm reading that suggests spacecraft being heavier and less fuel efficient, the same as aircraft being heavier and less fuel efficient if you need that, what the capability it provides, which is this super strong supportive functionality. So, I mean, obviously spacecraft aren't easy to protect it from bullets and stuff like that. It's more.
No, I suppose it's just a strong, lightweight. If it's a strong, lightweight material, if you have a requirement to have a super strong, something or other. I mean, I'm trying to think of the word. Component that's bearing weight or bearing a weight bearing structure, and the weight can be caused by acceleration as well as just physical weight. Kevlar, he's moldable. Is an obvious thing to replace what would be aluminium or steel because it's light and it's strong. Probably much more expensive, presumably, but certainly aircraft and aerospace don't worry too much about that up to a point. So it's obviously a super strong material, as you said. Again,
it might be tyres. I wonder if it was tyres because I mean it is used in tyres. I think in aerospace. I'm not talking about. I don't think it's used in car tyres.
Right.
I think it's aerospace. So,
but again, you can see why that would be a good idea because think of the Concorde crash of whenever it was, a piece of metal burst in the tire. If you've got a Kevlar material woven into your tires, you might have a leak.
Well, that was, and we even covered that on our Concorde podcast. Was that they replaced the tire with a Kevlar tire?
Indeed. So
it couldn't puncture.
Well, it might puncture, but it won't explode, which is but hopefully it wouldn't puncture either. But it certainly wouldn't fragment and blow up and bang into the fuel tanks and all the rest of it. So so you can see that's an obvious. I mean, if you don't have that, well, I'm afraid you have death then, don't you? I mean, if you've got material that's essentially there to replace heavier components, you may not be able to build the structure in the first place because it's too heavy. Or if you do, you're using lightweight components are more likely to fail, irrespective of being shot at or any of those scenarios. So people will die would die, they would have a lower fatigue life. And occasionally they would fail before the fatigue life was noticed. And then obviously you've got the protective clothing aspect.
Just talking about aircraft. So commercial aircraft, I'm assuming, I'm going to make an assumption here. I mean, you probably know better than I do. Do you think they have Kevlar tyres now?
I don't know.
I mean, obviously they would all had them replaced, but we rarely hear about tyre punctures anymore on jet airline.
They do still happen occasionally, but it's usually because they've been landed beyond the agreeable limits of how to land an aircraft. They've come in at funny angles or far too fast or whatever. But the only thing is they wouldn't do it for nothing, so they would only do it if mandated to.
Oh no, but if you were getting it, what I'm getting to is that we might have more tyre issues on planes, creating more problems.
Yeah, 100%. And more expense because you'd have to replace the tires more often. So they would have a shorter life. And of course, the airlines would absorb that and have a smaller profit, wouldn't they? No, of course they wouldn't. So that would go in the ticket. So again, all these things would add up to slightly more. I mean, it wouldn't hundreds of pounds or hundreds of dollars, but it would be more money per flight because you're replacing the tires more often.
And they're heavier as well because don't forget Kevlar's lighter. So the tyre's actually lighter if it's a Kevlar tyre.
I guess from that. as to fuel efficiency or lack of. Again, that's all adds up over the lifetime of the aircraft. And again, that cost of the new aircraft, because you'd have to buy a new one, it would wear out because it's heavier. It's working harder to get into the air. Shorter lifespan, more aircraft required, more expensive tickets. Now, again, we're not talking huge sums of money, but it's all part of the life cycle of the business. So yeah, so it's quite a significant. It's not just all about silly films where people get shot multiple times and walk away going, "Thank God I was wearing this 1mm Kevlar vest. I feel fine." I mean, that's, I'm pretty certain that getting shot even with a ceramic plate or a steel plate is pretty sore, and certainly would be with a Kevlar only thing.
You know that famous Tomorrow's World episode where Raymond Burke gets shot while wearing body armor. That wasn't Kevlar, was it?
James Burke, isn't it? Ben Rand.
No, I thought it was. Sorry, not James Burke.
Raymond. There was a Raymond. You're right. I can't think of what his name was. Was it Burr? B-U-R-R. Right?
Raymond Burr. Yeah, could have been.
No, that doesn't sound right either. But I know what you mean. But yeah,
was that Kevlar? Because that was a new material, wasn't it? Where he
sounds about. I can't. Yes, it'd be interesting.
I remember now.
Our listeners will have to Google that because we're running out of time. But if it wasn't Kevlar, there's the shooting down the what if scenario, because you just used whatever that was. But it probably was Kevlar. Again, 1968, did you say?
Yeah.
Well, obviously, I wasn't 65. So, yeah, I've not been in any scenario where I've ever had to worry about Kevlar, thank God. But when it became part of public consciousness, inverted commas, again, I doubt it was the 1960s. So, again, it took a while to become a ubiquitous product in the context of where it's used. But there's maybe a good reason for that. Maybe it was secret. It was used in secret to a large extent, but it was in there, but nobody knew it was in there, for bulletproof vests and such like, just some sort of material that worked. And didn't have the trade name, didn't come much later, I don't know, but anyway. But yeah, an interesting substance or material, and would have had an impact on many people's lives if it didn't exist. Right,
that's right.
Time up.
Okay, so and I must the next one. So 1948. So we're going back a few years, and we're talking about something everybody knows, which is the barcode. So Norman Joseph Woodland invented the barcode after a supermarket executive mentioned needing automated checkout. Woodland drew lines in the sand at the beach and suddenly envisaged a bullseye pattern, later refined to parallel lines. While the problem was mentioned, his specific solution used printed patterns, and optical scanning was entirely his creative leap. So, an interesting one.
Well, it says again, I'll be on a broken record here. So, 1948. So I can remember well into my late teens that in shops in the UK, big supermarkets, somebody had to go around with a pricing gun, putting the price on in currency, £1.50. So barcoding, and again, I can vaguely remember this on Tomorrow's World. For our non-UK listeners, there was a technology program which was very popular in the days when there was only 3 channels admittedly, but it was very popular and had a lot of innovative things on it that are now in everyday use. But barcode readers was definitely on there, and I would guess it was the late 70s maybe. So the question is, why did it take so long again? But that's a different podcast. But anyway,
yeah, I mean, even you just talk about grocery shopping, right, which is one of its primary. I mean, obviously shopping, but grocery in particular, because that's where you get lots of people all at the same time going through a small number of checkouts, and the checkout operator has to find the price without the barcode. Would have to find the price.
Well, there's a label on it, isn't there? That's why there was a label.
That's right, and then they have to type it into their
literally onto what essentially is just a mechanical calculator
register.
Cash register. Yeah,
that's right, and then so it's obviously prone to error one way or another, either up or down.
And obviously the back office loss there is you don't know what's been taken off the shelves, because because the person manually putting in an analog figure into a standalone mechanical device has no mechanism of telling.
No, that's right. It's just it's a price. It's not an identifier of what the goods are that were purchased.
Telling the logistics that we've bought 6 cans of beans, so therefore you need to order 6 more times X times. So it's a massive thing, really. So
I mean, I think this one's had quite a fundamental change.
Well, the main thing really is not the customer experience to any large degree. Yes, it's a bit quicker, but it's not fantastically quicker. It probably is maybe twice as fast, who knows? But is the logistics aspect of, I don't know how many people are employed in supermarkets, or what do they call them in America? It's a term. I can't remember. Oh, did he? Okay. I thought it was just the market. Anyway, but there must have been dozens of people employed to literally go around the shelves and see what had been taken. Stock taking exercises once a day at least, if to say that, every single item, well, if the shelves, there's only got 4 left, you would tally that up. Somebody would then say, well, we normally, again, not...
Well, that might still be true, say at Christmas when there's, lots of stuff is being sold very quickly.
Yeah, but you instantly know it's gone because it's just been scanned. So, it's just, it's gone.
Well, yeah, you'd think so. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, 100% convinced we do. But I say we...
I'm sure you do now. I'm wondering whether that was true, say, 10 years ago.
Well, it's the thing. It depends how big the supermarket was, but I can't. I would imagine you're doing a tally at least once a day to see what's being sold. And you imagine the overhead on that. I mean, I don't know how many people. You'd leave obviously at least one person to do that, and that's all they do. Maybe 2, 3 in a big supermarket. You'd have your own little department. Maybe it was a shared task of doing all the things. But again, and then obviously you've then got to compile that information daily, weekly. I don't know, and then you've got to somehow communicate that back to wherever you're sourcing your materials from, your cans of beans and what have you, and say we want 6 lorry loads or half a lorry load or whatever it is of this, that and the other, all done on pieces of paper. All right, didn't do pieces of paper at that stage, but the fact that you...
Yeah, sorry, go on.
I was going to say, the fact that you can't tell straight away what's going out with the shop is a massive thing, absolutely massive.
So what I was going to suggest is try imagining an Amazon warehouse without barcodes.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be the slick next day delivery operation that it is today.
So we've identified that
you wouldn't have all these robots wandering around, probably.
No, using analog systems would be dreadful. But the question is there an alternative to an electronic barcode? I suppose the obvious thing is a QR code, but that's just a
barcode with squares.
Exactly, it's just a barcode by other means. I mean, does it hold more information in the barcode? That's why it's kind of used. Presumably, we'll replace it completely at some point.
I don't know how many different combinations of a barcode you can have, because it must be standard in terms of how many lines there are. And then,
well, they think of all the products that are in the world, and most of them have a barcode. So I wouldn't say it's infinite, but there must be.
Well, I don't know whether it's I don't know whether barcodes are unique. Aren't QR codes unique? I think isn't that one of the things?
Well, I suppose you're right. I mean, I suppose you can have barcodes within one area of retail that doesn't interact with another area of retail, or even within a different company. And as long as you're not sharing, as long as you're uniquely supplying it through a chain that doesn't interact with these other barcodes, it shouldn't matter. But I mean, if the first time you do that would become a bit of a problem, wouldn't it? You turn that.
Well, if we were spending more than 10 minutes. I'd look it up just to see how many combinations on a barcode and how many combinations QR code.
There's nothing that springs to mind. So we know the analog system would existed obviously and is replaced and is much more efficient. If it didn't exist, well, the analog system would still exist. And cost wise, that would all add on to, because we know the companies wouldn't absorb the.
Well, you'd have to employ more people anyway. I mean, exactly. It'd be slower, more expensive.
Yeah. But I can't think of I was going to say, I can't think of a technological replacement particularly.
No, mate. With nothing obvious. I was just going to say, it's not just logistics as well. I mean, just think about medicine and medication tracking and.
You're right, and and you think of the just-in-time delivery systems that exist now, which allegedly are much more resource efficient and less wastage and all the rest of it. They have some fairly horrendous scenarios when it all goes wrong, but in terms of when they work, much more efficient, less wastage. I was going to say something I forgot. I suppose the only technology thing is, which doesn't really exist yet, but may have existed allegedly in some of these Google. Was it Google or Amazon had a shop in London and no doubt in America?
This show. Amazon.
They closed the one in London, but anyway, is that something just recognised what you'd bought. Now, whether it was using the barcode, QR code, or it was just recognising the shape. Who was telling me the other day that modern digital weighing scales in shops, and it knows it's a banana rather than a cucumber just by the shape. Was that a conversation I was having with you? I can't imagine it was. Well, who else was I discussing that with? But anyway, so modern ones, you don't have to go searching for bananas or apples. It just knows it's
got a camera. Well, it can't just now. It's got a camera.
Oh, I know that, but I'm talking about in terms of the end user experience.
Yeah.
So I suppose that's that's the replacement for it. But you might apply that by every single item in a great big supermarket, and we're a long ways from that at the moment.
Well, I can think of a potential alternative, and that's
got 2 minutes. Yeah.
Is the equivalent of what you've got in your credit card with NFC. So it's
an RF.
Yeah, some sort of RL tag. Yeah,
indeed. Well, you're right, and that's completely
a lot more expensive. Yeah, completely. It'd be a lot more expensive, but.
Well, briefly, I suppose for those who are not aware, an RF tag is basically saying that when scanned over the radio frequency spectrum, it gives back a unique code. So it's not using light stroke visual cues. It's using radio frequency, or radio information on the radio frequency spectrum. So, and you do see the little coils of, you sometimes see them on packets of this, that, and the other, not necessarily usually food, but little coils in the corner of a box or something printed on the side. But it is physical copper or something, I think, is, or whatever it is. But it's just,
so you wouldn't see it in everyday use, but it might be something.
But you do occasionally see it. Yeah, it's tech gadgets, and I've occasionally seen it on something which I was surprised about. I can't, again, not food, but something I bought at a supermarket. Again, it would be, I don't know, maybe a cable for something, in the package would have it on it. But again, bought from a supermarket or whatever. So it's not just back office material, replacement stuff. But yeah, that's a good one. And arguably it makes you wonder why that didn't come out first, because it's relatively analogy, in inverted commas, or certainly it's doable on an analog system to a certain extent. Or the front end's analog, shall we say, the radio frequency. Just, I say that, it might be digital radio for all I know. But anyway, you get my point. It doesn't sound like it's something that's impossible to envisage in the 1960s. The boxes that are doing the scanning in the supermarket would be huge, no doubt, but it's certainly doable. I'm sitting looking, thinking it's not dissimilar from an IFF system on the radar, which existed in the 1930s. Obviously, it's 100,000 times more complex in terms of its volume. But anyway, time's up.
The bell's gone. Right. Okay. So we're on to a final. Although I might mention the sixth one just a quickie at the very end. But anyway, we go all the way back to 1901. So. Can you think what this is? You probably could. Oh, I know.
It's Queen Victoria, is it? But it's sorry, go on.
So, disposable safety razor. So, King Camp Gillette envisaged an inexpensive razor with replaceable blades while working as a travelling salesman. I mean, at the time, men were content with straight razors that needed sharpening. There wasn't a desire to get rid of.
Yeah, so we're not talking about the plastic Bic type. We're talking about visualize a steel blade that you fit into a.
You've got to be of a certain age to remember those.
Yeah, I've never used them, but I can visualize my dad using them. But so steel razor blades, which notoriously people would use to cut their wrists with. There's a cheery thought just around.
Peaky Blinders supposedly put them up, but they didn't. But yeah, it was. So
it fits into a holder, fits into a stock, and the stock and the holder are metal, and you don't just throw them away. But obviously, the blade becomes blunt over time. I don't know how long, and then you throw that away and you put a new blade in. So in that sense, it's disposable.
Yeah, I mean, the safety bit is that the blade can only cut so far, so you can actually cut into.
Yes, the holder restricts its. Yeah, the holder, but you could. Notoriously, people in prisons and stuff would embed the blades into wooden.
Oh no, but that's the actual blade. The blade itself is dangerous.
Yes, exactly, and that's outside the context of its usage in the safety in the holder and stuff. Yeah, so a very clever invention. If you think about it.
I mean, nobody was, if people were arguably happy, and they obviously were, shaving with a straight razor.
Yeah, but they didn't know the alternative until it came along. So you can see why.
No, that's right. Yeah. So King Camp Gillette, didn't come up with the idea of a replaceable blade on a razor.
Which would why is he?
Well, that's the what if. So we haven't got.
Oh, you mean sorry? Yeah. Well, we've only been doing it for 49 episodes. What do you mean?
Was it?
The whole premise of the bloody podcast. Apologies for swearing. Indeed. I mean, to a certain extent, it does make you wonder if that kicked off the fashion in inverted commas for being shaved. Because if you look at photographs of famous people, and even all the films and TV programs you've ever seen in dramas of men before the 20th century. Yeah, all right, men had lots of moustaches, but beards weren't really a 20th century thing till the last 20 years. Became trendy again. Being shaven was the thing. I think in the Victorian people era, beards were more common. Big bushy moustaches were more common. Was that and how often poor people could afford to shave, given the time investment on it? Did that kickstart shaving essentially? All right, not shaving, but shaving every day, shaving most of your face every day. I think it might have done. I don't know. So one of the what ifs is beards would have been prominent all the way through the 20th century before they became hip again at the turn of the 21st century.
Well, I mean, so there is an alternative to safety razors, which I can come on to, but I think you're right that there's two aspects. One would be that if you did shave, and it's more likely you'd have to have money to be able to do that, so you'd be going to the barbers a lot more regular to actually get shaved, maybe once a week or whatever. I mean, which was the tradition, I think. Was
that really? I mean, that's the thing. I mean, based on purely
the weekends,
that was more of a haircut, wasn't it? But was that really a embedded tradition in the UK, going to the barber shop for a shave? I think it was more of an American thing, isn't it?
No, I don't know. I mean, you do get barbers in this country who do
indeed
who will shave, their customers. Whether it was, I mean, I still think it was something that happened in this country. I don't think it. I mean, it
didn't happen
in the US.
But it did, yeah. Well, I think that's my point. I'm not saying it didn't happen here, but I just think it was more of a thing in America.
Well, I mean, it'd be interesting if Americans were more clean shaven and the Europeans potentially were bearded. It'd be quite a continental difference.
Yeah.
So the alternative is an electric razor.
Yeah.
So who knows whether that, I don't know when the electric razor was invented, but arguably it could have appeared sooner, rather than
that's the obvious solution, isn't it? I mean, I mean, without googling it, because I don't want to lose the flow of our podcast, but I suspect it was in existence much earlier than you would assume it was. But in terms of popular and why it didn't catch on, well, maybe people didn't have electricity in their houses. Who knows? I wouldn't be surprised if it was as early as 1890 or something. But in terms of its popular usage, post Second World War, I guess. Again, I don't know how often young people in the West, less than 30 years, it's obviously men, less than 30 years old, do the majority of them use electric? Or do they still wet shave? I don't know. I suspect. I mean, I've always used an electric. Yes, I have wet shaved in my early days, but I very quickly moved to an electric shaver because it was more comfortable. I don't, you didn't cut yourself.
But so there is a sort of, I wouldn't say tongue in cheek, but something. What about women and shaving their legs?
Yeah. Well, again, they weren't using a cutthroat razor to do that, were they?
Well, I'm assuming they weren't, but that means if they weren't doing it and there was only cutthroat razors, then they wouldn't,
Well, I suspect they weren't doing it until the availability of a safe means of doing it. I mean, that.
Right, so if there wasn't a safe means of doing it then, so the norm would be...
Yeah. I never thought we'd be discussing... Yeah, I never...
No, but that is a consequence.
You're 100% right. I hadn't thought about it. You're 100% right. That's definitely a consequence of it. But I think the what if alternative is, the existing cutthroat razor, and how on earth to keep that sharp on a sensible basis.
You have a strop, don't you? That's what
who's sticking doing that every morning, for goodness sake? But
you don't have to do it every morning.
Well, okay, but again, not something you often see in a personal usage, really, do you?
No, but we're too used to safety razors and electric razors.
Well,
if there was nothing else, and you had to sharpen it, it was part of the routine. You wouldn't, and you're not shaving every day. You might strop the blade for a minute, and then you take longer over shaving. I mean, I don't know how long it takes to shave with a cutthroat when you're doing it yourself. Probably twice as long, maybe, than with a safety razor.
Yeah, and the end result would be fairly horrendous, I suspect, because you'd have to be so sharp that, I mean, you think of a razor in a disposable...
Well, you'd learn, I suppose, as you grow.
It's very thin, and it's incredibly sharp because it's thin, and it's made sharp in a factory. Trying to keep an equivalent cutthroat razor as sharp as that, because, it could never be as sharp, so it could never be as good apart from anything else. Unless you're a professional and you spend all your day making it incredibly sharp, as in a barber shop. But even then, that's totally dependent on how good you are as a barber and how technology could be doing it. But you're right. I think
There'd be a lot more barbers, or maybe there wouldn't, because there's
Well,
some
even
barbers
how-
now.
How much could you charge that would make it,
No, but if more people wanted shaves, then if the
Yeah.
demand there and the supply matched,
hardly convenient, is it? It's all very well John Wayne getting a shave in a cowboy film and shooting somebody while he's doing it and all the rest of it. But if you're a working man, how often are you going to go? Are you going to go every day or every couple of days to a barber on your way to work or vice versa?
Yeah, but I don't think you would. I think it'd be more of a weekly. That's why I think Fridays was like, well, you don't care if you've got a stubble at work, but on the weekend you want to look nice. So don't know.
But the electric would be the solution. I think they will be popular much earlier, probably well into probably the 1920s, assuming it existed. And I suspect it probably did. But it's hardly rocket science. I mean, it's easy to say that an invention isn't rocket science if you didn't somebody to think about it. But when somebody's inventing an electric razor, you think, well, some blades going through some mesh. Well, that's somebody somewhere would have stumbled upon that idea eventually and refined it and all the rest of it. And as your electricity became ubiquitous in the 1920s in people's houses, again, an obvious handy thing for somebody to have and to sell and to advertise, because a lot of these gadgets became ubiquitous everywhere because advertisers made it an object of desire, sort of thing. There's a better way to put that.
So that was the fifth one. I'm going to just mention the sixth
quickly,
and only because it has just. I'm just interested in knowing your views on if it hadn't have happened. Right, so 1867, even further back, dynamite and Alfred Nobel. Mm-hmm. Now, ultimately, people were always looking at explosives. So without dynamite, no doubt some other explosive would have come along. There were nitroglycerin was around. I mean, at the end of the day, he was trying.
Dynamite is a stable form of nitroglycerin,
and that's what he invented.
Yeah,
but ultimately, it was only because his brother died in an explosion where there was an issue. People weren't crying out for safer explosives, but other chemicals could have been and would have been created to.
Well, they were TNT, which is trinitride, toluene. That replaced essentially dynamite.
But the thing with dynamite, right, is, and it's not about the explosive that I was going to ask you. It's okay. So without Alfred Nobel, there wouldn't be any Nobel prizes.
What if FIFA prize? We have the FIFA prizes instead of
no. But what I'm saying is how much of an impact did the fact that there is a Nobel Prize have on people in science, for example? I don't know whether it's had the slightest bit of interest.
I doubt it would have any. Well, I don't think it would have any impact. I don't think most scientists aren't narcissists like who and looking for prizes.
I don't know. It's an interesting question for a scientist to see.
I think they're doing it because of the
drive to win a prize.
No, I don't think so. It's the fascinating. They're doing it because they're curious. They want to go from A to B in their chosen profession in terms of not in terms of reward, but obviously they want that as well. But in terms of because they have to live like everybody else. But I'm fascinated in how X works. But
one of the things that comes with the Nobel Prize is cash that allows them to carry on doing.
True, but that I don't know how much the money is in comparison to a grant from a government agency or a pharmaceutical company or a.
Well, anyway, that was the last one. So if anybody's got any views on what the potential impact of Nobel Prize is, forgetting the dynamite, I'd be interested to know. It was just something I got to think with that one.
Okay.
So that's it for this year. That's it for Series 3. Look forward to seeing us in Series 4 with episode 50 being our first episode. So.
Some new and old guests.
Yes, right. Some guests, new and old.
And if anybody, I'm just going to say, if you as a listener are interested in being a guest, by all means, drop us a line.
That's right. Let us know what you'd want to discuss as a counterfactual. We're always open to plenty of ideas. Anyway, thanks everybody for listening. Have a great Christmas. We'll see you in the new year. Bye for now.
Bye.
And that's it. We hope you've enjoyed today's episode. But after listening to us natter on, why not let us know what you think? Find us on Blue Sky by searching for Chats in Time. On Facebook, search ORC Time. And on X, we are ORC_time. Until next time, cheerio!